Dr. Now, is it now you've worked hard to be a PhD. So is it doctor? Like, where are we going here?
Ed is just fine, guys. My wife calls me a lot of things and she doesn't call me doctor. I can tell you that.
Can you imagine if she said, "Hey, doctor, breakfast is ready"?
I,
Would.
I'd be concerned. I'd be really concerned.
That is awesome. Well, good to see you. I know that you are somebody that is in high demand around the world. So let's get right to work with you. Obviously, you're somebody, and you don't know this, but we've talked about you a lot on this show. I thought the interview you did several weeks ago on 92.9 was really enlightening. I think your voice has brought so much energy to Memphis. So when you look at the grand picture of Memphis, Ed, what is your role in the success of Memphis Athletics?
Honestly, I think I'm just a steward of Memphis Athletics, right? The athletic department was here long before me. The university was. It'll be here long after me. And I had the privilege of working with Tony Bennett before coming here. And I think you heard it in his retirement speech, that if we look at these opportunities as if they're on loan to us and our job is to make them better, then I think we'll leave the place in better position than we found it. And so that's my only goal, is to be a voice for Memphis and to stand up for Memphis in a way that I don't think people really have in the past. And so far, we've been pretty successful at that.
Well, I also think one of the interesting things is that you're coming into a time where the business of college athletics has completely changed. And I mean, it's changed in a very short window of time. And you look at your, and I mean, no disrespect when I say secondary sports, look at your experience at Memphis, and look at your background at Virginia now. Mm-hmm. And you look at you've gone from a small school to Virginia now to Memphis. You're uniquely qualified, in my opinion, to lead Memphis into this new world of finances and in college athletics. Do you agree with that your history, your track record, your background qualified you pretty uniquely to lead Memphis?
Well, it sounds a heck of a lot better when you say it than me, right? From a humility standpoint. But, I'm reminded, and I tell my staff often, I'm reminded of the Steve Jobs commencement speech. I think it was at Stanford, where he said, you can only connect the dots looking backwards. And I think working in a city like Baltimore and a low resource institution like Morgan State and having to stretch a dollar and be really creative, in that type of demographic, and then going to a place like Virginia that has old money and history and tradition at the highest level of college athletics, I think I have a set of experiences that allow me to walk into any situation that Memphis is facing and feel at least comfortable that I've been exposed or I have some experience in these areas. And so I'm excited for this new iteration of college athletics. I think those of us who embrace it will be successful, and those who don't will have a difficult time.
And when you talk about embracing, the way college athletics works now, obviously the AAC just rolled out this minimum investment program. How do you feel like that helps, Memphis move forward and work with its student athletes to be successful in college athletics?
So simply put, it helps the league, right? And I think the better the league is, the better it is for Memphis. Look, you guys have talked about it extensively. The bracketologists are talking about it. We're at a disadvantage because our basketball program is so good right now, but the league is not as good. And so I think a rising tide lifts all boats. You saw it with our women's soccer program. Everyone wants to talk about basketball or football, but look at women's soccer, who was in the top 20 for almost the entire year. They lose one regular season game to Tennessee by 1 goal, and then losing a golden goal in overtime in the championship, and they can't make the tournament. So my goal for the American is to get better, because if the American gets better, it helps Memphis. And I think that's how we should look at it as a good partner to the conference.
But let's talk brass tacks then. How committed to the American are you? And we've heard all about this flirtation of Memphis is going to the Pac-12, right? Like we've heard that. I've heard you talk about it multiple times. And I think the question that I would ask you, Ed, is are you in a place, where you're still available to the Pac-12? Does that interest you? And have you spoken to, or do you have a continuing dialogue with the Pac-12 right now?
I appreciate the directness of the question. We're committed to the American because it's the only home I have, right? It's the only home we have as a department. We don't have any other offers. We don't have an additional offer from the Pac right now. And Teresa and I only had that one conversation after everything transpired. And I did that press scrum, which I really appreciated my conversation with her and her approach. So right now, and I'm sure you're going to ask this, our focus is really on just winning and winning at a high level because that's what we can control. I'm less worried about the Pac-12, the Big 12, and I'm more worried about making sure we compete at the very highest level we can. As a competitor, I want to compete against the best in the country. And if that's in the, whatever league, then that's where we want to go. So it's nothing about disdain against the American, but it's about how do you position yourself as an athletic department to show off your university against the best competition in the world. And that's our goal. I've never been shy about that from day one.
No, well, that's certainly true. No, you have not. And I appreciate that. I think we try so hard not to talk directly about things. We try to talk around things. And I just think one of the things that I would directly ask you is, did you, when you talked to the Pac-12, obviously you guys got back together as a conference and your commissioner has talked about the stability in the conference. Mm-hmm. Did you sign a new agreement? Do you have a long-term grant of rights? Like, what is your contractual situation with the AAC?
Our contractual situation has not changed at all. It's the same before the offer from the Pac. So nothing has changed as far as the circumstances surrounding our membership to the American Conference. And I will say this because, I think Tim gets hit pretty hard. Tim Pernetti, that is, gets hit pretty hard. He's got a tough job because in our conference, you have a wide spectrum of institutions with varying levels of investment. And so he's got to herd everybody. It's like herding cats, right? He's got to herd everybody and get them rowing in the same direction. So I don't envy the job that he has because the goals that Memphis have could be very different than someone else in the conference. And I think Tim has got to find a way to bring everybody together. But to answer your question directly, because I don't dance around anything, we do not have another offer. And we're committed to the American because that's where our home is. And I can't worry about something I don't have.
Well, I also think it is, and damaging might be dramatic to use as a term, but it's damaging these conversations about leaving, staying, going, money, what we're willing to commit to. Like, how sustainable are these conversations, realignment? Because you guys feel to me, and you correct me if I'm wrong, you feel to me as somebody that wants to be at the highest level of college athletics. I don't care if it's football, basketball, soccer, but it doesn't make sense to me that we continue to talk about Memphis going here or Memphis going there when you guys have simply said, hey, we want to play at the highest level. Does that mean that your aspirations are to be in a power conference? Does that mean that you want to win the college football playoff every opportunity that you guys get? Like, when you say I want to be at the highest level, what does that mean?
Yeah, it's really circumstantial, and here's why. Right, we're ranked 16th in basketball on both polls right now. Right, hoping to move up a couple spots today. Football finished in the top 25. Right, and we're one of only 6 schools in America to do that. So I would argue that our program right now is as good as anybody comprehensively, especially on the revenue sports side. And so if there's a path to get to the CFP and a path to get to a Final Four and for our Olympic sports to get in the NCAA tournament, then that to me is the highest level. If that path is in the Big 12, if that path is in the Pac-7 or 8 or whatever the numbers are going to be, or if that path is in the American, I'm fine, right? I'm less worried about everyone else's concern, but I think what we hear all the time and what you're really alluding to is the fans. There's the rational argument and there's the passionate argument. And as the athletic director, I have to have the understanding of the difference between both. And so I understand why folks are passionate about getting out of the American. But I've actually listened to you guys speak before, and I thought you did a wonderful job characterizing why we did not take the offer from the Pac-12. Even if that gives us a chance to compete at a higher level, it could be at a detriment to us financially, which ultimately doesn't give us the chance to compete at the highest level, right? And so I have to wade through that information when trying to make the best decision for Memphis athletics.
You talked about travel, and I think that's a big deal. I think the mental health of your students, I think the well-being of your students is always paramount. You've said that. How big is that travel piece? And if we're talking about the Pac-12, I mean, Corvallis, Oregon is not an easy place to get to. Going to the Palouse is not an easy trip to make. Like, how significant is that to you?
It's really significant because look, the other set of experiences that I have is I played baseball in college, and I was fortunate to play a little pro ball when I was done. But I know what it's like to be on buses for 6-7 hours. That's not fun. And I don't want to put anyone's son or daughter in that position where they have to take a 2-stop, commercial flight to Pullman, Washington. And so that's very real to us. Look, we have to do a better job telling a better story at Memphis. Everyone wants to talk about how successful we are athletically, but what folks aren't talking about is a 3.4 GPA as a department, or 58 student athletes earning a 4.0, right? So these young people, and 79% of our department earning a 3.0, 333 individual student athletes at a 3.0 or better. So I owe it to them to be able to pursue their academics at the highest level as well. And I still don't think you have to sacrifice the academic component for this pro model of sports that we're going into, because we're still dealing with 18 to 22-year-old young people. And my job is to give them the best experience. And I didn't think putting our Olympic sports in the Pac-12 for the amount of money they were offering certainly was not the best option for those young men and women.
And I think when you talk about competing at the highest level, I think we hear so much in the media and in conversations about this NIL piece. And I think this new program the Americans rolling out, where this new program gives you guys 3 different ways to benefit student athletes. Like, I was looking at the Alston payment portion of it that deals with academics, like you were just kind of talking about. I mean, is that something that you guys can be more aggressive with? Because Tim Pernetti talked about how the $10 million number is just a minimum. So do you feel that Memphis can be more aggressive with this, and that can help you guys win at a higher level? Or where do you kind of come down on that?
Yes, exactly. I think you hit it right on the head. I do think that we can be more aggressive in this space. FedEx has been a tremendous partner of ours, and given us that $5 million over 5 years, so $25 million, which gives us a base of $5 million to start from. There's a matching component to that. We have to raise $2.5 million in order to get that full $5 million. So that puts us at 7.5 just to start. Right. And that's before we, garner other support. So I think a niche for Memphis in this new space of college athletics is that we have great donor support and phenomenal corporate support. And I think that allows us, while we may not have a budget as big as some of our competitors in the top 25, we can pay student athletes in this new model better than a lot of schools. And I think that's a niche for Memphis, right? It allows us to try to retain a PJ Haggerty, or do what we did with what Ryan did with Seth Hennigan and retain a star quarterback who started for 4 years. So I actually think that's our niche, and we're going to try to exploit that. I think in any market, you got to figure out what you do the best, and then you go at that 100%. And I think we right now, especially at our level, can take care of student athletes from a name, image, and likeness and a revenue share standpoint, where a lot of other schools in America can't, and we're going to exploit it.
Do you buy into this idea of breaking college football away into, call it whatever you want, a super league, a new entity? We've heard so much about that, because I don't feel like, again, and I'm not speaking for you, when I look at Memphis, I don't think it's just, your situation's not sustainable. Is this ridiculous? You're winning too much for your fellow members of the AAC. Like, I think you guys you're in not a dissimilar situation to what we saw with Clemson and Florida State. And I think it's very interesting where you guys are.
Yeah.
Can a new football entity help you? And do you support that? Do you buy into that being the future of college football?
Honestly, I'm wide open, right? I tell our team, I don't think in a box, because when I look outside my window, I see the entire world. I don't see a box, right? So if we have to bifurcate our athletic department, meaning if we take football one direction, whether that's a super league or a certain conference, and we were to go in a different direction with basketball and our Olympic sports, if that's what's best for Memphis, then that's what I'm going to do. I think for so long, we've tried to be traditionalists, and we've seen in the courts that the traditional model is not working anymore. So I don't, it doesn't matter to me as long as it gives our football program a chance to compete at a high level. And we're building this or renovating this beautiful stadium. We got to fill it up, right? And we got to generate more revenue from football. And if it's best for basketball and others to go in a different direction, then so be it. What I don't want to do, and I'm careful when I answer these questions, I don't want to lock us into something that I don't know doesn't exist. I think good leaders, as I said before, I call it situationalship. Leadership is situationalship. Laird was in a different situation than I was. Tom Bone was in a different situation than Laird. So I think you look at the situation and you say, what is our goal? If our goal is to compete at the highest level, well, if they present me an option that allows me to do that and it doesn't have football and basketball in the same conference, so be it. The goal is to win. And if we can win at a higher level doing that, then that's what we're going to do at Memphis.
Is private money attractive to you guys also? Because I think whatever private money is, donor money, we hear all about these investment firms that are $1 billion. Like all the big numbers are great, but there's always the unintended consequences. So are you guys looking at private equity? Are you guys looking at ways to enrich yourselves that are not in All-State Stadium kind of thing? Or because it just doesn't seem like, and I don't mean to be redundant, but Ed, it just doesn't seem like this financial model is sustainable. And I don't care if you're in a P4 or a G5, the numbers are getting more and more difficult to add up. And it seems like everybody's talking about private equity.
Yeah, people are. We've done some exploratory conversations about it. Listen, I'm gonna be very vulnerable here. As you guys know, I'm transparent. I grew up without a lot of means, well below the poverty line. I struggle borrowing money if I don't know how I'm going to pay it back. And I still don't know that anyone has a full grasp on what the return on the investment of private equity money will be. And for me and for our department and for President Hargrave and talking with him, that's just something we got to learn more about. Until we know the ins and outs of it, I think it's a speculative market. And it's kind of like the Pac-12 deal with the media deal, right? It was speculative. I don't need to speculate right now. Is it sustainable long-term? Probably not. Is it sustainable for us in the near future? Yes. So that gives me time to be deliberate, judicious, and really discern, what's going to be best and try to understand. Because let's say it's a 9%, 10% return on private equity. Is it better to get a loan at 4 or 5%, right? So I think, I just don't want to get enamored with the new and the shiny. I want to do what's right. And that sometimes it's best to be first and other times it's best to be right. And I think where we're going at Memphis and what we're trying to do athletically right now, it's best for us to be right and not necessarily first.
All right. Last question I'll ask you is about Penny Hardaway, because one of the fascinating things I heard you talk about was leadership conversations about who's at fault for winning and losing. And I thought that was one of the best answers that I've ever heard you give. So let's talk about Penny and basketball and how important is it to win games in the tournament versus just going to the tournament? And what are your expectations for Memphis basketball over the next month?
Yeah, I'll take it backwards. My expectations are for us to try to make a deep run in the tournament. We're resourced like a Power Four in our basketball program. We always have been. That was my initial conversation with Penny, right? If I take his resources and put them up against Virginia and some of these other blue bloods, you'd be surprised how well Memphis stacks up from a facility standpoint, travel standpoint, and then just resources around the young men in the program. So yes, my expectation is that we make a deep run. Now, I also have to understand Penny's still growing as a coach. He's been very open and vulnerable about that, which I'm so proud of him for. So, what that looks like this year, I don't know. But I tell you right now, I don't think anybody wants to play Memphis in the NCAA tournament. I'm disappointed about where our seed is. So I have to, potentially is. So I have to take that into account. But unequivocally, the goal at Memphis in men's basketball is to make a deep run in the NCAA tournament. And just to watch Penny grow over this year, for me has been a joy to watch how the city has re-embraced him and to watch how a native son of the city has re-embraced the city and reinvigorated it in my first year, man. I'm just so grateful for the success that he and Ryan and Brooks in soccer and Richard has had in soccer. God has given me more grace than I deserve, and I'm just trying to absorb it right now and support Penny and the guys, because if we get the right matchups, you could see us in late March, early April, making some noise in the NCAA tournament. And I'd love to do that for Memphis, for this city and this university.
Do we understand how important Memphis basketball is to Memphis? Do we understand? I don't think people understand how important your athletic program is to Memphis. Do you think people understand that relationship?
Man, I'm so excited you said that and you threw me this alley-oop. And if I miss this dunk, it's on me. Look, there's two things I underestimated coming to Memphis, right? Putting all my cards on the table. Number one was the media attention. We have a lot of beat writers in a small space, and they're all trying to carve out elbow room. And so it's awesome that people pay that much attention, but they also regurgitate a lot, right? And so I have to be mindful of that and how I handle that. The other thing I underestimated, not just basketball, and you saw that against South Florida. We had over 14,000 people at a game against South Florida, right? We average almost 12,000 people at men's basketball, which is more than the majority of the country actually seats in their arena. But the other thing I didn't realize is how important Memphis athletics is to this university and this city. And I'll give you an example. If the university is trying to raise 45 million this year, the responsibility of the athletic department is 25 million. So what other schools does the athletic department raise about 60% of the actual funds that go to the institution? And by far, we are the biggest marketing arm for the University of Memphis. We had 21 games, men's basketball games on ESPN, one on CBS, and we had 12 games on ESPN for football linear. These are all linear. I'll put that up against most P4s in the country. So at the end of the day, I underestimated how important my role is to further the university and the city. And that's why I say I'm very grateful, because it's an awesome experience, both in fun and in size and scope of responsibility. So thank you for that alley-oop, but you couldn't have laid that up there any better for me.
Hammer it. Dr. Ed Scott, the athletic director at Memphis. Ed, really nice to meet you. I appreciate you coming on the show.
Thank you guys for your time, and you've been very kind to me over my tenure. I've heard some of your comments, and I really appreciate it. So go Tigers.
You bet. There you go. Wow. Lived up to it.
Awesome,
it is
dude.
very rare that
Awesome.
you have you get an interview like Dr. Ed Scott, and then he goes and lives up to it. I think the relationship that Memphis Athletics has, and we talked about the importance that athletics plays to enrollment in fundraising.
Yeah.
I think in places like Memphis, it's critically important. You have to have, they play at FedEx Forum. Remember that.
Yeah.
They play in a big building, and that building's not empty. And I think when we look at things like Penny Hardaway or Deion Sanders, for instance, can you imagine Penny Hardaway and the relationship he has with that city not being successful? And the funny thing is, I don't think people understand that he's been a really good head coach at Memphis.
Yeah.
He's never lost or won less than 20 games in a year. And now I understand that 20 win bar is not what it used to be, but that's pretty dang good at a G5 like Memphis. I think it is really important that we all understand the place that a Memphis or a G5 live and how important winning is to resources. And I don't mean better flavors of Gatorade.
Yeah, I mean, when your athletic department is responsible for raising 60% of the funds of the university,
what is their budget? $62 million, I think.
I would have to look, but yeah,
Man.
I mean, that's a lot of responsibility. I mean, I think the point is really solid. Like you take a job, and you take that job knowing that not only obviously your goal is to win, right? Of course, but as part of winning, you know, if you don't win, you're going to struggle to fundraise. You're going to struggle to raise money for the. Again, I want to make this clear. Dr. Ed Scott didn't just say that they're responsible for 60% of the athletic department budget. He just said they're responsible for 60% of the university's funds,
budget.
Dude.
Money.
Like, that is a massive responsibility.
Look at Arizona.
Man.
Look at that.
That kind of mistake
my
happening
God.
in Memphis would be
crippling.
It can't happen.
Crippling.
And so the point just is that people, I feel like sometimes ask, hey, well, why did Memphis or any other university hire this person to lead their athletic department as an AD? And it's very clear to me after having him on the show right there why they did. And it's because he's forward thinking. It's because he's got the right type of energy. It's because he's listening to that interview. It's very clear he's a massive advocate for being transparent and being open. And
how about a guy answering direct questions?
Yeah, like he's being transparent and is cool with having the conversation. So I just think that the question about, hey, like Memphis is in a is in a similar position to what Florida State and Clemson were dealing with in the AAC, I think is a really interesting conundrum if you're the American, because you can't, obviously they're not at risk of losing Memphis. I don't think, after what he just said about their relationship with the Pac-12 right now, I don't think Memphis is going anywhere. But if you're the American and you're Tim Pernetti, you got to take care of Memphis, and you got to make sure that relationship stays strong.
I also think Memphis has to find a place where other people are going to win games, because I think they just don't have enough competition. They don't have enough people. He said what I always say: a rising tide raises all boats, and they don't have the rising tide. They are the rising tide.
Yeah.
They are the boat.
Yes.
Right? They are,
And I thought his point about, too, let's not skip over the fact that he just said that their starting base with this new program is $7.5 million, not 3.3. And that's partially through sponsors and other things that they're doing. So they're definitely a program that's being aggressive with it, which was great to hear.
Yeah, I love that he answered questions directly. Yeah. It's so hard. And you guys know we don't do a lot of interviews, and maybe that's what this will transition us into. Big changes coming to the Monty show. So we'll end the show today telling you that we are, in fact, moving back to our afternoon time slot, April 1st. It's not going to be an April Fool's Day joke. Because I know everybody's going, oh, hey, Monty.
Oh, well, Monty.
We will be moving back to afternoon starting April 1st. 3 to 7 Mountain, 2 to 6 Pacific, 5 to 9 Eastern.
Mm-hmm.
And we want to do more interviews. It's very difficult to get people of note like Dr. Scott or Gloria Navarez, or we don't ask Jimmy the beat writer to come on the show.
Right. We could. We don't.
We don't. It's just we don't see the greater good in that. What we do is we try to talk to principals and athletes. We try to talk to people who impact your sports world. Dr. Ed Scott, perfect example.
Right.
That's why we don't do a lot of interviews. In the afternoon, we will be doing a lot more interviews. Those people are more readily available in the afternoon than they are in the morning.
Mm-hmm.
Number one. Number two, it gives us an opportunity to go and do things like Big 10 Media Day, Big 12 Media Day.
Yeah.
It gives us an opportunity to go to bigger events. It gives us an opportunity to broadcast from different locations, which for us means we can drive more revenue through the show. We can, there's just more things that we can
available
do
to us.
So that's April 1st. That is. And
our first show in the afternoon will be the 7th, I believe.
Yes, it will not be April 1st.
Yeah, because we have some travel, unfortunately, the first week of April. But
our first show will actually not be. It will actually be April 1st. Will be our first show, because then we are in Chicago from the Friday the 4th.
Oh, right.
Through Sunday the 13th. So we'll be off that week. And then our next show will be April 14th.
Right. Okay.
So we take our first week off of the year, essentially the second week of April.
Yeah.
So starting April 1st, and I guess, heck, maybe we're doing that. Are we doing that on? I really hate when the month ends on a Monday.
That new. Yeah. So probably the last day of March will be.
Yeah, we'll figure that out.
Yeah, we'll figure that out.
Yes, we are, in fact, moving back to afternoons. That will happen. And hey, listen, if you're a morning listener and you struggle to listen in the afternoon, I hope you'll stay with us. I do. I see all of your comments. Yes, Kim Coulter, Dr. Ed Scott's a star, but what I got from the interview is that Memphis has piss poor alumni participation. No, I would disagree.
I didn't get that from the interview at all, dude.
No, I think that they're drawing 12 to 14,000 fans in an NBA arena is pretty dang special.
Yeah.
For their basketball program.
Yeah.
Dr. Ed could go and do anything he wants in the world. Dude could run for president. He's that good. He's very, very smart, very well spoken, very well thought. It's not that you speak well, because before you speak, you have to have the thought.
Yeah.
And you can see his mind's in the right spot. No performative political answers. Nothing from him. I love the fact that he didn't just talk around things.
Yeah.
I really appreciate that. Interview was fantastic. Thank you. Please have him back. We will. Ed is a good guy. Great interview. Appreciate that. Thank you. Mike Smith, Mountain Mama, on the road again for VA appointment. Have a good day, gents. Mike, travel safely.
Yes.
There you have it. The Monty Show, as always, can't play the exit music. The Monty Show, as always, presented by The Advocates, theadvocates.com, Murray, Utah, today at 12:30. Jake will pass out giving blood.
Yes.
I hope you don't. I joke. I probably shouldn't joke about that.
Yeah.
We will be donating blood today, 12:30 at the Advocates office in Murray, Utah. No matter where you listen to the show, coast to coast, the best injury attorneys in the business are available to you 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year at theadvocates.com, where you can chat with an injury attorney live online, and it won't cost you a dime. That's where you get clear, risk-free advice, theadvocates.com. Until tomorrow, say goodbye, Jake.
Goodbye, Jake.